Some days your spiritual path may feel empty. No divine whispers, no holy fire, just silence. And yet within that quiet, something deeper is happening. Not a void, but an invitation. Not abandonment, but an initiation. Recently, I experienced such a moment of visitation, not from spirit this time in its dazzling form like an angel, but from a familiar shadow. It looked like opportunity. It felt like ego desire. It was something more ancient. I think it was a test. In modern psychology, we might label it a projection or a resurfacing of unconscious craving. Jung would call it a meeting with the shadow self. In Hermetic language, it was a daemon, a being of angelic form, an archetypal force designed not to harm, but to awaken. What appeared to be a human interaction was actually a mirror asking me, will you return to the old story or will you remain in your truth? In my book, Zeroing Out, I described moments like this as ego glitches, those flickers where past programming tries to overwrite our present awakening. The temptation wasn't evil, it was familiar. That's what makes it so seductive. But this time I didn't engage. I watched, I listened, and in the silence I felt the quiet smile of the universe. This too is what Theophast teaches, the angelic archetype with one wing. That spiritual evolution is not about grand epiphanies, but about right response in subtle moments. This climb toward wholeness happens in the quiet corridors of the choice that God gives us. The Bible says in 1 Kings 19:12 that God was not in the wind or the earthquake or the fire, but in a still small voice. But sometimes even that voice doesn't come. That's where the science of mind offers clarity. Spirit operates through our consciousness. If we want to hear God, we must quiet the noise of personality and ego. In that silence, we're asked not to perform, but to be, not to prove ourselves, but to remember. A Course in Miracles teaches that all temptation is a temptation to see ourselves as something we are not. It's never about the object of desire, but the identity we assume when we chase it. So I stood still, watching. I chose not to reach for the lower frequencies of my ego. I chose not to believe the lie that something outside of me could fill the well within. This is what the Kybalion calls rising above the pendulum. The law of rhythm tells us that all things swing back and forth, emotion, thought, clarity. But the master chooses stillness at the center of the pendulum. That's where I stood, trying not to be immune but unmoved. So if you're feeling unheard by God today, or if you're being tested by familiar energies, know this. You're not being punished. You're being refined. You're being trusted with silence because Spirit knows what you're becoming. Today, this isn't the absence of divinity. It's divinity itself coming to you in its most subtle form. Don't wait for thunder. Listen to the stillness, and in that place, you'll hear the echo of your own higher self. That's one thing I want to share today. Also, I want to talk about something mystical that happened to me yesterday, something I can't even define, something I didn't quite expect, and something that I'm still trying to understand. Yesterday, while I was driving to work south on I-95 toward my usual work destination, Fort Lauderdale, I blinked. And as I opened my eyes again, found myself nearly 10 miles north of where I had started. It was so strange that I had to put on my um, guidance system to help me find out where I was. I didn't know where I was. I was somewhere north in Delray. So I turned around. I knew where I had turned. I had gone over it 100 times. In fact, I was very in my mind and in my body when I was making my right turn south on 95 and my usual turn into the express lane. But when I looked up to see the normal sign that I usually see, I was way north in a place I don't even know, in Del Rey, which in Spanish means of the king. Just a sudden, strange, and sudden shift in space and possibly in time. Now, you might say that sounds like a dream or a glitch or even a moment of dissociation. And you're right to question this, and as I did many times, going over what I had done in time and in human space, as I had said. But spiritually and psychologically, something deeper could have been happening here. The collective agreement of space time. In metaphysics, particularly in the Hermetic philosophy that I've been studying a lot of, the all is mind, the material world, including time and space, is a mental projection, a shared dream, if you will. From modern psychology, particularly constructivists and transpersonal models, we learn that our perception of reality is a co-creation from all of us. We see what we expect to see. We experience what we believe to be real. This collective lens creates a kind of unconscious agreement about how things work. Time is linear, space is stable, and cause always precedes effect. But what happens when the veil lifts, even briefly? I mean, that's what I pray for every day, that I might see beyond the veil of my own ego and humanity's. Is this not the only way to help the earth in its shift toward the fourth density? If I'm not moving in that same direction toward the fourth, how can I lead others? What happens when the collective agreement of space-time dissolves? The internal cosmos shifts. From the Corpus Hermeticum I read, the cosmos is all formed, not having forms external to itself, but changing them itself within itself. This suggests that the universe and we as microcosms of that universe are constantly shifting from within, not by adding something new, but by rearranging what already is. Psychologically, we might call this a paradigm shift or a psychic realignment. In trauma therapy, when old structures fall apart, new ones must be born. I know this is happening within me every day. Old is passing away. What I don't need, what I don't desire, is being transformed and shifted into something new. In mystical terms, it's the rebirth of identity, my identity or your identity, a death of old form to make way for the new. And when this happens, time doesn't move the same way. The ego doesn't lead. The inner compass, the divine compass, takes over. Spirit moves like Tao. After the incident, I felt disoriented, even drained, as if my body had to recalibrate after crossing an invisible boundary. But in that fatigue, I a whisper of clarity emerged. Just like the Tao and Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, the spirit doesn't push, it flows. It carries, it shapes without violence, it bends time, curves space, and heals wounds without touching them directly. From a psychological standpoint, especially in depth psychology, these moments may reflect the unconscious integrating new material, a sudden flash of awakening. Whether through grief, love, or strangeness, forces us to reconsider who we are and what's real. Jung called this individuation the process by which the conscious and unconscious selves merge into wholeness. Hermes called it the making one of mind and soul. Jesus called it being born again in spirit. The Tao calls it not non-doing that accomplishes all things. So if you find yourself disoriented today, as I was yesterday, if time slips or your direction feels blurry, if you're not walking your usual path, don't rush to correct it or even understand it, especially with your ego mind. You may just be dissolving your agreement with the old world, with the old ego, and aligning with the new you, your new story, as one with God and the holiness that you'd been created as. You may be shifting form like the cosmos within yourself. And if the spirit is moving like Tao, you're awakening without effort. It's pretty heavy stuff. But thank you for walking this deep path with me. As always, I invite you to listen with a profound silence, not just to the world outside, but to the inner cosmos that's blooming into something greater within you. If this touched something within you, please like, subscribe, and share. And let me know in the comments, have you ever experienced a moment outside of time? I'd love to hear your story. Until next time, blessings and peace.